The sound of tearing fabric sliced through the din, of clinking glasses and muffled chatter, stopping several patrons mid-sip. Under the amber glow of the bar's pendant lights, a ripple of shock moved through the room as four men, reeking of whiskey and arrogance, laughed loudly, their hands still clutching the shredded hem of her black dress. Madison Cole, 32, stood frozen for a heartbeat, the jagged rip in her dress bearing more than she'd ever want a roomful of strangers to see. A wave of heat, half from humiliation, half from fury, flushed up her neck. They thought this was funny. They thought she wouldn't fight back. Madison had been working at Logan's Tavern for the past 3 years, ever since moving back to her hometown of Brookhaven. She'd always been the cool-headed one behind the counter, pouring drinks, diffusing drunks, and keeping the peace. But tonight was different. These weren't just any troublemakers. They were locals she recognized from high school, the kind of guys who'd peaked at 17 and had been coasting downhill ever since. They still carried the swagger of small-town kings, expecting the world to bend for them. Her mind flashed back to the last hour, the build-up that led here. They'd been taunting her from the moment they walked in, calling her sweetheart, leaning too far over the bar, brushing her arm when she passed. She'd brushed it off at first, as she always did with rude customers. But each drink made them bolder, each laugh louder, until the ringleader, Travis Kane, decided to up the ante. She'd been walking by with a tray of empty pint glasses when she felt the sudden tug the rip, and then their laughter spilling across the room. The patrons, who saw it, had mixed reactions. Some looked away, unwilling to get involved. Others watched with narrowed eyes, as if wondering if she'd explode or crumble. Madison did neither. She swallowed the rage building in her chest, forcing her face into a calm mask. Without a word, she set the tray down on the bar and straightened what was left of her dress. Relax. Maddie. Just a joke, Travis slurred, grinning like a man convinced he owned the night. His buddies chuckled behind him, eyes darting between her and the crowd. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Inside, she was already moving past the embarrassment, past the noise. Her mind was a clock winding backward to a time most people in Brookhaven had forgotten, when Madison Cole was the undefeated lightweight boxing champion in the state's amateur league. Years of training had left her with reflexes wired into her bones, a right hook that could drop a man twice her size, and the discipline to know exactly when to use it. And now, staring at the smug faces in front of her, she knew that time was coming. Not now, not in front of the crowd, not while the bar was still humming with the Friday night rush. She'd bide her time. She'd make sure, when it happened, there'd be no one around to misinterpret who started it. She leaned in slightly, just enough for Travis to smell the citrusy gin still clinging to her fingertips. "You boys have a good night," she said, her voice low, smooth, and utterly devoid of fear. Then she turned away, leaving their laughter hanging in the air like a taunt she was willing to carry for now. But beneath her steady steps, her hands were curling into fists. The storm was coming. The bar's clock inched toward midnight, and the Friday night rush began to thin. Madison moved between tables with practiced ease, her smile a perfect mask over the boiling thoughts underneath. She laughed when she had to toss playful remarks to regulars and refilled drinks without spilling a drop. To anyone watching, she seemed untouched by what happened earlier. But every clink of a glass, every low chuckle from the corner table where Travis and his crew sat was fuel being shoveled into a furnace deep inside her. She noticed the way Travis kept glancing at her. His grin, smug and self-satisfied, like a man who thought he'd put her in her place. The other three, Derek Cole and Mason, fed off his energy, tossing crude jokes loud enough for her to hear. She didn't flinch. She didn't give them the satisfaction. If there was one thing years in the ring had taught her, it was patience. The fight wasn't won in the first round. It was set up in the quiet moments when your opponent thought you weren't paying attention. Between orders, Madison found herself thinking about her father. He'd been her boxing coach, the one who drilled discipline into her until it became muscle memory. Don't throw the first punch in anger, he used to say. Throw it when you've already won in your head. He died 5 years ago, but she could almost hear his voice now cutting through the noise of the bar. She was calm on the outside, but in her head, she was already stepping into the ring. At 12:15, the last of the couples left, leaving behind the smell of beer and fried food. Madison wiped down the bar, avoiding eye contact with Travis's table. She knew they weren't going anywhere yet. People like them thrived in the quiet, after closing when the staff was tired and fewer witnesses were around. That's when they'd make their real move. Sure enough, when Logan the owner gave her the nod to start locking up, the 4 men still lingered. Their chairs sprawled back like they owned the place. Logan didn't like trouble. He was already tired from a long night and didn't notice the way Travis's eyes followed Madison as she gathered empty bottles. "Lock the front. I'll finish up in the office," he said, tossing her the keys before disappearing into the back. The air changed. Without the crowd, the bar felt smaller, the silence pressing in. Madison collected the last of the glasses and slipped behind the bar to stash them. She could feel them watching. "Hey, Maddie," Travis called. His voice slurred, but still sharp with that cocky edge. "Why don't you sit with us? We'll buy you a drink." She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed the trash bag from behind the counter and tied it off. "Closing time, gentlemen. Out you go." Derek laughed. "Oh, come on. Don't be like that. We're just having fun." "Fun," she repeated, glancing at the tear in her dress. Her tone was still calm, but her eyes were colder now. You might want to look that word up. They didn't move. If anything, their grins widened. That told her everything she needed to know. They weren't planning to leave through the front door. Like decent people, they were going to wait until she was alone. Fine. She slung the trash bag over her shoulder and pushed through the back door into the alley. The cool night air hit her face, but she wasn't thinking about the breeze. She was thinking about timing, about positioning, about the fact that the alley had no security cameras. She let the door swing shut behind her and started toward the dumpster. The sound of it creaking closed was almost immediately followed by the shuffle of footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. Not yet. The storm wasn't here, but it was close. The alley stretched narrow and dim, lit only by a flickering street lamp at the far end. Madison's shadow moved long across the cracked pavement as she walked toward the dumpster, her trash bag swinging like a pendulum. She could hear the footsteps now, 4 sets uneven, but closing in with the confidence of predators who believed they'd already trapped their prey. The bag landed in the dumpster with a dull thud. Madison straightened slowly, her breath, even her back still turned to them. "Well, look who we found," Travis drawled, his voice echoing off the brick walls. "Closing up all alone. What a shame." She turned halfway, just enough to see them under the weak yellow light. Travis stood in front, his smug grin wide. The other 3 fanned out slightly behind him. Mason cracked his knuckles. Derek's hands were shoved in his pockets like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or just watch. Cole was bouncing on the balls of his feet, nervous energy sparking in his eyes. Madison leaned against the dumpster, folding her arms loosely. "You boys really want to do this?" she asked. Her voice calm, but edged with something sharp, something they didn't recognize yet. Travis stepped closer, his boots scraping the ground. "Do what?" "Have a little after-hours fun. No one's around. Maddie, you don't have to keep playing bartender now." That word, fun again. She let it hang in the air, her gaze locking on his. "You remember high school?" He continued, his tone dripping with nostalgia that was anything but sweet. "You were a firecracker back then. Guess I just want to see if there's still a spark." His buddies chuckled under their breath. Madison didn't answer right away. She took a slow step forward, closing the space between them by just a foot. "Yeah, I remember," she said softly. "I remember you running your mouth a lot back then, too." Travis's grin faltered for half a second, but he masked it with a scoff. "Still got that attitude, huh?" "I've got more than that." The way she said it made Derek's smirk twitch. Something about her posture had changed, shoulders loose, but balanced chin, slightly dipped feet shifting just enough to square with theirs. Years in the ring had taught her to read the air before a fight, and right now, it was thick with overconfidence on their side. Travis stepped in even closer, so close she could smell the cheap bourbon on his breath. "You think you scare me?" "No," Madison said, her tone cool as steel. "I think you underestimate me." That's when Mason reached out fingers, brushing the rip in her dress like he was testing her limits. It was the exact trigger she'd been waiting for. Her right hand shot up, gripping his wrist and twisting it hard enough to make him yelp. She stepped in her left elbow, driving into his ribs with a sharp thunk. Mason staggered back, clutching his side, the air knocked clean out of him. The alley went still, except for his wheezing. Derek muttered something under his breath, stepping back instinctively. Cole froze. And Travis's grin was gone completely now. He took a half step back, but pride wouldn't let him retreat fully. Madison adjusted her stance, her fists loose but ready, her eyes steady. "This is your only chance to walk away." No one moved. That told her exactly how the next 30 seconds would go. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It was here. Travis lunged first. Predictable. He swung with his right, a wild looping punch meant more to intimidate than connect. Madison didn't flinch. She slipped to the side, her body angling just enough to let the fist pass harmlessly by her cheek. In the same motion, her right arm snapped forward in a short, explosive arc, her knuckles driving square into the point of his jaw. The sound was sharp and solid, a sickening mix of bone meeting bone. Travis's head snapped to the side. His knees buckled, and for a moment, he hung there stunned, like his brain was still trying to process what had happened. Then gravity took over, and he crumpled to the ground, one hand weakly grasping at the air before it landed limply beside him. For a split second, the alley was silent except for the ringing in her ears. Derek's mouth fell open. Cole took a step back. Mason, still clutching his ribs from earlier, muttered a curse under his breath. "Holy!" Derek started, but stopped when Madison's eyes locked on him. Her gaze was steady, unblinking. That was the thing about fighters, real fighters. They didn't need to scream, didn't need to make threats. The silence was enough. "Pick him up," she said flatly, nodding at Travis. "And get out of my sight." Cole, the youngest of the group, hesitated. You knocked him out in one punch." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The evidence was lying unconscious on the pavement at her feet. Instead of doing as told, Derek made the mistake of trying to save face. "You think this makes you tough?" He wasn't ready. Madison took one slow step toward him. Her voice low but deadly clear. "I don't care if he was ready. He put his hands on me. That's all the reason I'll ever need." Something in her tone broke through his bravado. Derek glanced down at Travis, then back at her, and whatever he saw in her eyes convinced him that tonight wasn't worth pushing any further. He motioned for Cole to help him, and together, they half-lifted, half-dragged Travis upright. His head lolled still out cold. Mason was the last to move, his breathing still shallow from the elbow to his ribs. He gave Madison one final glare, but it was the kind that came from wounded pride, not courage. He followed the others without another word. They shuffled toward the street lamp at the end of the alley, their footsteps quickening as the distance grew. Madison didn't move until they turned the corner and disappeared completely. Only then did she allow herself to exhale. The adrenaline was still in her veins, her hands tingling from the contact. She looked down at her right knuckle. No blood, just a faint redness where skin had met bone. Her father's voice echoed in her head again. Calm and steady. One clean shot. End it before it starts. Madison turned back toward the bar's rear door. She pushed it open, the warm light of the empty tavern spilling out to meet her. Inside, everything looked exactly as it had when she'd left silent, orderly, peaceful. She locked the door behind her, flipped off the lights, and took one last look at the alley through the small glass pane. Empty now. Quiet. But she knew the silence out there wasn't the same as before. Word would spread. Travis Kane wouldn't be laughing about her tomorrow. And the next time someone thought about crossing the line with her, they'd remember what happened in that alley and think twice. Madison didn't see them again for almost a week, but the story traveled faster than the weekend crowd could carry it. By Monday afternoon, customers she barely knew were giving her respectful nods, and the regulars, usually full of sarcastic banter, kept their jokes softer, less sharp. Logan didn't ask for details, but she caught him looking at her differently. A flicker of curiosity behind his eyes. The real confirmation came Wednesday night. The tavern was busy again, a midweek surge, thanks to a local softball win. Madison was sliding a pint across the bar when the door opened and a hush rolled through the crowd like a ripple on water. Travis Kane stood there, his jaw slightly swollen and tinged yellow with fading bruises. He didn't smile this time. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he kept his head low, mumbled something to the guy at the door, and left without ordering. It was over in less than 30 seconds, but it said more than any confrontation could have. Madison returned to pouring drinks, her face calm, though a quiet satisfaction settled in her chest. She hadn't just won a fight, she'd reset the balance. Later that night, as she was restocking the cooler, Mason slipped in through the side door. He didn't swagger this time. He didn't meet her eyes right away, just leaned against the wall, like a man trying to find the right words. I came to, say sorry, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. For that night. I was drunk, and you were an idiot, she finished for him, her tone firm, but not cruel. He nodded. Yeah, that too. She studied him for a moment, deciding whether to believe the apology. His shoulders were hunched, his hands fidgeting. Not the posture of someone faking humility. Finally, she gave a small nod. Then don't do it again. To me or anyone else. Mason's eyes flicked up to hers. You got it. He left without another word, the door swinging shut behind him. By Friday, the whispers had slowed. It wasn't the kind of story people could keep alive without fresh drama, and Madison preferred it that way. She didn't want to be the talk of the town forever. She just wanted to work in peace without having to worry about hands grabbing or voices sneering every time she walked past. And that's exactly what she got. One quiet evening, as she was wiping down the counter before closing, Logan wandered over with 2 beers. He set one in front of her and took the stool across the bar. You're good at keeping the peace, he said, his eyes meeting hers. But I think now people know you can end it if you have to. She smirked faintly. I'm not looking for trouble, Logan. Maybe not, he said, lifting his beer in a small toast. But trouble knows better now. She clinked her bottle lightly against his and took a sip. The night outside was calm, the tavern warm and quiet. Madison didn't need to tell anyone what happened in that alley. The people who needed to know already did, and the silence that followed was the best kind of victory. Sometimes, the most powerful message isn't shouted. It's delivered in silence after decisive action. Madison didn't seek violence, but she refused to accept humiliation. Her patience turned the tables on her tormentors, proving that strength isn't just in the punch. It's in knowing exactly when to throw it. In life, you don't have to fight every battle, but when the line is crossed, standing your ground with certainty can earn a respect that words alone will never command.